Srila Prabhupada ki. Do we do the Jai Om Vishnupad?
Yeah, if you want.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivjaka Acharya Ashtottara Shata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivjaka Acharya Ashtottara Shata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki. Nam Acharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki. Vrindavadam Mathura Dham ki. Jagannath Puri Kshetra Dham ki. Mayapur Navadvip Dham ki. Gangamai Yamuna Mai ki. Tulasi Devi Bhakti Devi ki. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Start? Yeah. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you for coming to today's wonderful Sunday Love Feast at ISKCON-Long-Island Temple. Okay. So, as we all know, this is, right now we're in the midst of, we're halfway done with Purushottamas, the most special of all months, which only comes every 3 years. So I thought we would do a verse from that chapter today, from the Purushottam Yoga chapter, which is the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. I will not do a whole summary of the chapter, but I will only speak on one verse. And this is the 7th verse of the 15th chapter. So if anyone has a cell phone on them, this is a great time to take it out so we can use it in its right purpose. So we can read the verse together. If everyone types in BG 15.7 into their phones, then we'll all have access to the verse.
What's the verse again?
15.7.
15:7 Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah. Does anyone have it? Somebody? Even one person is good.
I have.
Okay. All right. Mamaivangsho jivaloke. Mamaivangsho jivaloke. Jival bhuta sanatanaha. Jiva bhuta sanatanaha. Manah shashtani indriyani. Manah shashtani indriyani. Prakriti-sthani karshati. Prakriti-sthani karshati. Mamaivangsho jivaloke. Jiva bhutah sanatanaha. Manah shashtani indriyani. Prakriti-sthani karshati. Mamaivangsho jivaloke. Jiva bhutah sanatanaha. Manah shashtani indriyani. Prakriti-sthani karshati. Please chant.
I'll just chant it, and otherwise,
Yeah.
in the interest of time.
Sure.
Mamaivangsho jivaloke.
Mamaivangsho jivaloke.
Jiva bhuta sanatana.
Jiva bhuta sanatanaha.
Manashashtani indriyani.
Manashashtani indriyani.
Prakriti-sthani karshati.
Prakriti-sthani karshati. Mama. My. Eva. Certainly. Angshaha. Fragmental particle. Jiva loke. In the world of conditional life. Jiva bhutaha. The conditioned living entity. Sanatanaha. eternal. Manaha, with the mind. Shashtani, Shashtani, the six. Indriyani, senses. Prakriti, in material nature. Sthani, situated. Karshati, is struggling hard. Translation: the living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. Please repeat. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. Purport. In this verse, the identity of the living being is clearly given. The living entity is a fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, eternally. It is not that he assumes individuality in his conditioned life and his liberated state becomes one with the Supreme Lord. He is eternally fragmented. It is clearly said, Sanatanaha. According to the Vedic version, the Supreme Lord manifests and expands himself in innumerable expansions, of which the primary expansions are called Vishnu Tattva, and the secondary expansions are called the living entities. In other words, the Vishnu Tattva is the personal expansion, and the living entities are the separated expansions. By his personal expansion, he is manifested in various forms like Lord Rama, Nrsimhadev, Vishnumurti, and all the predominating deities in the Vaikuntha planets. The separated expansions, the living entities, are eternally servitors. The personal expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the individual identities of the Godhead, are always present. Similarly, the separated expansions of living entities have their identities. As fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, the living entities also have fragmental portions of his qualities, of which independence is one. Every living entity, as an individual soul, has his personal individuality and a minute form of independence. By misuse of that independence, one becomes a conditioned soul, and by proper use of independence, he is always liberated. In either case, he is qualitatively eternal, as the Supreme Lord is. In his liberated state, he is freed from this material condition, and is under the engagement of transcendental service unto the Lord. In his conditioned life, he is dominated by the material modes of nature, and he forgets the transcendental loving service of the Lord. As a result, he has to struggle very hard to maintain his existence in the material world. The living entities, not only human beings and the cats and dogs, but even the greater controllers of the material world, Brahma, Lord Shiva, and even Vishnu, are all parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. They are all eternal, not temporary manifestations. The word karshati, struggling or grappling hard, is very significant. The conditioned soul is bound up, as though shackled by iron chains. He is bound up by the false ego, and the mind is the chief agent which is driving him in this material existence. When the mind is in the mode of goodness, his activities are good. When the mind is in the mode of passion, his activities are troublesome. And when the mind is in the mode of ignorance, he travels in the lower species of life. It is clear, however, in this verse, that the conditioned soul is covered by the material body, with the mind and the senses, and when he is liberated, this material covering perishes, but his spiritual body manifests itself in its individual capacity. The following information is there in the Madhyandina Yana Shruti. We'll skip that for now. It is stated here that when a living entity gives up this material embodiment and enters into the spiritual world, he revives his spiritual body. And his spiritual body, he can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. He can hear and speak to him face to face, and he can understand the Supreme Personality as he is. From Smriti also it is understood. In the spiritual planets, everyone lives embodied features like the Supreme Personality of Godheads. As far as the bodily construction is concerned, there is no difference between the part and parcel living entities and the expansions of Vishnu Murti. In other words, at liberation, the living entity gets a spiritual body by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Last paragraph. Almost there. The words Mamai Vangshaha, fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, are also very significant. The fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord is not like some material broken part. We have already understood in the second chapter that the spirit cannot be cut into pieces. This fragment is not materially conceived. It is not like matter which can be cut into pieces and joined together again. That conception is not applicable here, because the Sanskrit word Sanatana, eternal, is used. The fragmental portion is eternal. It is also stated in the beginning of the second chapter that in each and every individual body, the fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord is present. Dehinasmin yatha dehe. That fragmental portion, when liberated from the bodily entanglement, revives its original spiritual body in the spiritual sky, in a spiritual planet, and enjoys association with the Supreme Lord. It is, however, understood here that the living entity, being the fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, is qualitatively one with the Supreme Lord, just as the parts and parcels of gold are also gold. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militang Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayang Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurung Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatang Vitang Tang Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitang Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padang Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhang Vitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This one is for?
It's for the other room.
Oh.
Can you see hello? Test.
Test. This one? Like closer you mean? Oh.
Or maybe put it.
We'll amplify it a little bit more.
Okay.
See if we can push.
Mamay vangshu jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha manaha shashtani indriyani prakritistani karshati. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Is it better?
Yes.
Due to conditioned life, they're struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. So the Prabhupada wrote a lot of important points. So we'll speak about those important points. Firstly, question for all of you. Who here thinks that they're actually independent? Are we actually independent? No. And how many of us want freedom? Everybody. This country runs on freedom. We even have a statue called the Statue of Liberty. Of freedom. So everyone, we want freedom. We want independence. We want autonomy. We don't want to be controlled. But the fact of the matter is, are we really actually independent? We're not. Because we are dependent at every single step of our lives. We're dependent on food. We're dependent on sleep, air, water, relationships, emotions, validation about our emotions, the weather, the government, health, so on and so forth. The list goes on. And even our happiness oftentimes is often dependent. So the problem is not dependence, right? The problem is that our dependence is misplaced because we are dependent at all times. We cannot help it. So that's not the problem. The problem is who we're depending on and where our dependence is placed. And oftentimes, majority of the population, it is in a misplaced place. So this is where this verse explains that we are eternally dependent beings. And when we are not dependent on our source, that's when we are disconnected and we suffer. So this is the sum and substance of this verse. Basically that when we are disconnected from our source, we are suffering. So mamai vangshaha means we are parts and parcels of whom? Krishna. Just testing if you guys are awake. So Krishna says, mamai vangshaha. Krishna is saying this, not us. We're not parts of each other, no. We're parts of Krishna. That's why he says, mama eva angshaha, mama eva angshaha. So, we are not God, but we are parts of God. We are not separate, but we're always connected to God. So this is what mamai vangshaha means. And the analogy is that, Prabhupada gives many analogies of this. In this verse, he gives gold mine and gold. Also in other places, he says fire and a spark. So the fire is Krishna and spark is a living entity, which is us, the angshaha. Same way, the fire has heat, the spark of fire also has heat. The fire has light, and the spark of fire also has light. But that small spark is never equal to the fire. In the same way, we are also eternal. Our soul is also eternal. Krishna is also eternal, but we are not Krishna. Our small soul is not equal to Krishna's supreme soul. So the same way, the soul possesses consciousness, it possesses love, it possesses intelligence, and it possesses individuality. But Krishna, he possesses consciousness, love, intelligence, and individuality in a much greater sense than we do. Because Krishna is the source of all opulences, he's the source of everything material and spiritual. He's the source of everything. So all of our identity comes from Krishna. And the problem arises when we forget this identity. We identify with our body, we identify with our mind, we identify with our family, we identify with gender, politics, nation, earth, planet, so on and so forth. Our achievements, our skills, so many things we achieve, we identify ourselves with. But all of these things, they're temporary. When we leave our body, none of these things will be there. But that's just a end of the life thing. Even in this next few months or few minutes, we are constantly changing. What I thought of doing yesterday, or what I thought who I thought I was yesterday, I may not be the same person in a few years. That's called growth. Like we mature, we grow over time, we learn new skills, we have a different understanding of the world. So over time, even our thoughts are changing. What to speak of our body. In a few years, let's say I have $50,000 right now in my account. I may or may not have that money in a few years. I may lose it, or I may have more than 50,000. So everything in this world is temporary. All identifications that we make, if it's not connected to something eternal, meaning something that is not related to Krishna, then all of that is a misplaced identity. And that's where all our confusions and struggles in life starts from. Because we forget where we come from and who we are. And we forget that we're sanatanaha, which is another key word used in this verse, meaning eternal. Our identity of mamai vangsha, of being that angsha of Krishna, is not something we feel today or we are today, tomorrow we may not be. No, it's sanatanaha, always. And that's what Sanatan Dharma means, and that's what we're following here. Sanatan Dharma is another word for Krishna consciousness, because Sanatan is our eternal identity. We are our eternal parts and parcels of the Supreme Sanatan, which is Krishna. So this means that, what does Sanatan mean to you guys? If you are eternal, what does eternal mean?
It never died, or it never non-exist, it always exists.
Correct. There is no point at time where we were created Jai Nimai Nitai ki Jai. There's no point in history or in the present or in the future where we were ever created, or is there ever going to be a time when we will come to an end. The soul will always live. It's always been living, it is living, and it will continue living forever. But the body changes, the mind changes, and the journey from the soul from body to body, that changes. In our body we can see that once upon a time we were a little baby, then we became a youth, then we became an adult, then we got into a midlife crisis, then we became old, and then we eventually died. And then again we entered a new body, maybe in a different species. We went from human to an elephant, who knows? So we've had millions and billions of births, but the soul has been the same, because the soul is eternal. That's the property of the soul, meaning that the soul has seen everything, but because it's so small, it's forgotten all the changes that it's been through. So death, anxiety, sufferings, these are all symptoms and symptoms of material life, the temporary life, because material life is not sanatanaha. The life of this body will come to an end one day, and that is asanatanaha. But the soul is different. But the sad part is that we spend our entire lifetime trying to maintain this short and temporary identity. We always remind ourselves, oh, I am the son of this person, I am the husband of this person, I am the wife of this person, I belong to this family, I come from this country, I am proud of this state in the country. Even in a nation, we take pride of being from a specific state or from a specific locality. But all of this is going to come to an end one day. Prabhupada narrates this story of this person who was very attached to his family, and at the end of his life, when he died, none of his family was there to look after him. And in the next life, because of that attachment, he was born as a dog right around the house. And when he came barking to the doorstep of the house looking for food, because he knew that this was his family from his previous life, but those members of the family didn't know who this dog was. So they shoot the dog away. So that's our reality. We have a body, we live for a certain number of years, and then the body dies. And then we move on to the next part of our journey. So the problem is, what do we do with this little independence that we have in this body? Do we do something that connects us to the Sanatan part of existence? Or do we do something that connects us to the temporary or the asanatan part of existence? So this is where Krishna gives us tiny little bit of independence. And this independence, he lets us use in any way that we seem fit. Now Krishna gives us the free will to choose, to love whoever we want, because that's independence and that is bhakti. If Krishna told us, you have to love me, imagine someone's telling you, you have to love me, otherwise I will not, whatever. So many different things can be said. But that condition means that it is being forced on you, and it's creating this tension within you, and that's not what Krishna wants. He wants us to love him voluntarily. He doesn't want to force his love on us, because if he did that, then he would be a horrible master. Right? If someone does that, if someone forces their love, then they're not really a true master. They're kind of like you're becoming their slave. But Krishna is not like that. He knows that everyone loves him. Deep down, he knows that we love him. And he knows that this feeling can be revived. And he doesn't force it on us because he's kind. And that's true love. So the point is, this misplaced independence that we have by our attraction to so many different things in the world, family, nation, society, all these things. I'm not talking about devotees, I'm just talking in general. But because we're still struggling with our senses, even as devotees, this still is very much applicable to us. We should not think at any point that, oh, because I'm a devotee, I've made it. No, we've just started our journey. There's a long, long way to go. So if we use our independence, the little independence that Krishna's given us, if we use it for the wrong things, then we will attain the results of those actions. If we do something asanatan or something material, then the result of that will be a material birth again. But if we use that same independence to do something sanatana or something eternal, then our next birth will be eternal. And if it's not eternal, it will be something as a stepping stone to that eternal life. Meaning, we will be born in a devotee family, or we'll be born in a very pious family, where it will become easy for us to remember Krishna at all times. So, the material life begins when the soul says, I want to enjoy without Krishna. And spiritual life begins when the soul says, oh, I want to enjoy with Krishna, not separately. I want to do it with Krishna. But the problem is, manaha shashtani indriyani, the mind and the five other senses. The mind is the leader of the senses because it controls what the senses do. If the mind wants to do something to enjoy, it will make sure to divert the senses in that direction. So the process of Krishna consciousness is not about controlling the senses. It is about controlling the mind. Why? Because the mind is the leader of all the senses. So that's why the mind is also considered a sense, because it is controlling the other five senses. The five senses, do you know what the five senses are?
I saw a window.
Huh?
I saw a window.
Okay. Prabhuji, can you tell him what the five senses are? The five senses? Sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. These are the five senses. So the skin always wants to feel something soft. I don't know why I touched this, but something soft. The eyes always wants to see something beautiful. The tongue always wants to taste something yummy. Sometimes not so yummy, but the tongue still desires things. The nose always wants to smell nice smelling things. And the eyes, what was the other thing? I said eyes already.
You said
I know. Ears. And the ears always want to hear something soothing to the ears. But the problem is, not always, this is not always the case that the eyes, ears, nose, they want to listen to something good. Sometimes the senses, they want to listen to something bad. And that's where the problem starts. Depending on what mode of, like say there's mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. The mind, depending on where the mind is, if someone is in the mode of ignorance, then the things that they will see, hear, taste, touch, and the other one, those will be in the mode of ignorance. But if someone who's situated in the mode of goodness, they will always strive for the best things. So being in the mode of goodness is so very important to be in Krishna consciousness. So the mind is the problem here. The mind is controlling all the six senses because that's how the mind was created by Lord Brahma. The problem is, the mind is always thinking, feeling, and willing. It always, at one point it's accepting something, and the next minute it's rejecting something. Today, you might want to read the Bhagavad Gita. Let's say you eat a lot of prasadam and then you sleep a lot, and the next morning you wake up tired. You may not want to read the Bhagavad Gita the next day. That's how the mind works. So the problem is of interpretation, how the mind perceives things and how it interprets situations in life. So the mind has to be channeled in the right places. This is where the appropriate use of independence comes in, by applying the mind in the right place. So if we spend a lot of our time, and unfortunately this is the case in modern day society, social media, we spend so much time on our phones, just mindlessly scrolling. But the mind is not mindless, it's very much active. It's recording every little thing. Every little thing that we see is being registered in the mind. Everything we hear is registered in the mind. And each and every little thing is creating a samskara, or an impression. And this impression, depending on if it's a good thing or a bad thing, will determine your death, and it will determine your birth. Because whatever we think of at the moment of death, that same thing will help us, will cause us to take a birth. So if we're thinking of Instagram at the time of death, I don't really know what the next birth will be, but it will be a difficult one. That much I can say. So like that, exactly, yeah. If someone thinks of eating meat while leaving their body, or killing someone, then the next birth they'll have is that of a tiger. So this is how transmigration of the soul works. And this is the reason why we're struggling. And that's why Krishna says in the last line, Karshati. This is why we're struggling, because the mind is always placed in the wrong place. It's always misplaced. And this is why modern life feels so exhausting, because we're constantly trying to apply our mind in matter, not in spirit. In the previous ages, in Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, there was an environment which helped us apply our minds on spiritual practices, or if not spiritual, at least pseudo-spiritual practices. But nowadays, our absorption in matter is so deep and so tight, the knot is so tight, that it makes it very, very difficult for us to get out. For example, a relationship, a boy and a girl meet together, they fall in love, they start dating, then one after the other, they make commitments. So each and every little commitment strengthens the bond. And then one big fight happens. But because of all these connections they've made, each and little knot that they've tied, it becomes harder and harder to pull out of that relationship. So they continue. It becomes toxic. The relationship becomes toxic, but they can't pull out because they've committed so much. And eventually, when they break up, it's like the worst thing that's ever happened in their life, because their mind was in the wrong place. They did not follow the proper way of using the right independence that was given to them. And this is the symptoms of misusing our independence. So far I have simply described the main words of this verse. But the main topic of this verse is real dependence and independence. So independence, actually, we're all looking for independence. Everyone in this world is looking for independence. But unfortunately, they don't know that that independence that they're looking for actually comes from dependence. Dependence on what? Anyone? On Krishna. Yes. So real freedom comes through the right dependence. Think about a train track. If the trains are going on tracks, right? Yes, sure, it's restricted. It cannot just go wherever it wants. It has to follow the track. But the moment the train decides, not the train, but the train driver decides to go off the tracks to save time or whatever, that will cause havoc. It will cause an accident. But being on the track, although restricted, it's useful, it's beneficial, and it gets you from point A to point B safely. So like this, in this material world, the soul can follow rules and regulations given to us by scriptures, by God, or it can choose to do whatever it wants by enjoying its six senses. But if it does whatever it wants, sure, there's a lot of freedom, you can do whatever you want. But the problem is, again, it has to take birth. It will suffer. It will take birth again and continue its transmigration in this world. But a soul who decides to keep on the journey of restrictions, rules, and injunctions by the Vedas and the Guru and Krishna, then although that journey might be restrictive, might be a little, oh, I can't do this so much, I can't do that anymore. But the result of that will be eternal happiness. And that will be our true independence. So scriptures, although there's many injunctions that tell us not to do this, not to do that, it's for our own benefit, because the ultimate goal of all scriptures is to liberate us from this material world, mukti. And that mukti is just the beginning. It is not even the final goal. The final goal is love of God, to love ourselves and to love God and to love each other, because we're all parts and parcels of God. But until we get to the place of mukti, it's very difficult to get to the ultimate goal. So we have to free ourselves from this bondage that we've, drowned ourselves into over millions and millions of lifetimes. And that can be done in only one way, because this material nature is what has been controlling us through the three modes of nature: goodness, ignorance, and passion. Sattva, tamas, and rajas, or sattva, rajas, tamas. Goodness, passion, and ignorance. But there's only one person in this entire world who can control the three modes of material nature. Anyone know who that person is?
Krishna.
Purushottam Krishna, yes. So every expansion of Krishna is a Purushottam in some way or the other. Like Ram, Lord Ram is a Maryada Purushottam. Oh, the other names are not coming right now. But Krishna is Lila Purushottam. Because every expansion of Krishna, every avatar of Krishna has a specific function that they do. And whatever they do in that specific function, they do it to the best that anyone can ever do. Any man can ever perform. So this is why Krishna is called Purushottam. So until and unless we take shelter of any of these Purushottams, like Prabhupada said, innumerable expansions of Krishna, who are all eternal, we will struggle in this life with our six senses, because the mind will tell us to do this today, do that tomorrow, and do something else the next day. And again we'll start, okay, I should have done this. Again it will do something. So this cycle will keep repeating over and over again until the mind gets a higher taste. Parang drishtva nivartate. That's what Krishna says in the second chapter, in the 59th verse. And that's really the only way how we can control our next destination. So Krishna has given us this independence to do what we want. But like a father gives his child or son or daughter pocket money, now if that son or daughter misuses that pocket money and buys drugs and alcohol, do you think the father is going to be willing to give that son or daughter more money? No. He's probably going to restrict it or eventually stop it. So Krishna, in the same way, if he sees that we're using his little given independence that he's given us in the right way, then he'll give us more independence. Okay, this soul is doing good, I can give him some more. But if he sees that this soul is using it for all negative things and nefarious activities, then Krishna will say, okay, maybe next life he can have a little bit more restrictions imposed on him. So this imposition of more material control on that soul is not because Krishna is hating us or he wants to punish us. He wants us to understand that until we take shelter of him, we cannot get out of this world, because there's no other personality who can help us get out except for him. Because he is the creator of this material universe. He's the controller. Maya dakshena prakriti suyate sa characharam. Every living and non-living entity is controlled by this material nature. But Maya dakshena, he is the controller of that material nature. So that he wants us to understand. So his instructions are not like control mechanisms, but they're more like protection mechanisms. He's protecting us because he wants us to come back to him. And he doesn't want us to take more and more births. So until we have this understanding that we must take to Krishna consciousness, and it may not be right away, we can do a little bit by little bit, one bit at a time, increase on the level, day by day. Jai Nimai Nitai Ki. So like this, Krishna wants us to go back to him. And it's very simple. Prabhupada says, spiritual life is simple, but it is not easy. We have to put in effort day in and day out. And this effort simply starts by saying, my dear Nimai Nitai, please accept me. My dear Nimai Nitai, please guide me. Radha Govinda, please guide me, please accept me. This is our prayer. And this is, Prabhupada has given many definitions of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. But one of the most concise and perfect definitions is, dear Radha, dear Krishna, please accept me. Because ultimately we are his parts and parcel. And without being connected to that eternal supreme, our existence is lost. We're like particles of dust scattered all across this universe. But the moment we take shelter of Krishna, we become a dust particle on his lotus feet. And that connection of that dust particle on that lotus feet will take us back home, back to Godhead. And then we'll realize what true independence means. Because in the spiritual world, Prabhupada writes in the purport, the liberated souls have the same amount of independence as Krishna does, which means that we can do whatever we want in the spiritual world because we're purified. Our mind is purified and the spiritual senses are purified. So automatically, if the senses and the mind are purified, we'll be doing pure things, which is serving Krishna. So this Purushottamas is the perfect opportunity to serve. That's there. Serve, yes, but serve more. We've been serving. We're serving every day. Either we're serving God or we're serving Maya. No matter what we do, we're serving either of the two. So Purushottamas is a wonderful time to serve God more. And we can serve God more by doing so many different things. We can chant one more extra round. We can read one extra verse. If you're not reading anything, we can start reading. If you're not chanting, we can start chanting. If you haven't come to the temple to do service, we should start coming to the temple. If this is your first time coming here, please continue coming. If you haven't tasted prasadam before, start taking prasadam. If you're taking prasadam, continue taking prasadam more and more. But of course, know your limits. Because, yeah. So, I think I should conclude there, right?
What's that?
I think I should conclude there. It's a good time to
Yeah,
conclude.
yeah, and we can ask for questions.
Yes.
But if you have
So-
a question,
One small thing. If I made any mistakes or if I said something that's not true or correct, please forgive me. I'm just a little soul trying to serve. So, if there are any mistakes, please forgive me. And I hope I was able to talk about something worth listening. Hare Krishna. Any questions or concerns? No questions.
he has a question.
Oh. Hare Krishna.
Talk into this.
Hare Krishna. You were saying that Antyakala, I mean the last moment, whatever you think, if you are really thinking about God, then you will reach God. But whatever you did the entire life, say, praying to the God, trying to attain moksha, right? And you are doing all the karma activities related to the God only. But at the end of the moment, if at all, it's not the same thing. You don't think about God, what will happen?
If you have spent your whole life serving God, then it is highly unlikely that in the last moment of death you will not think of God. Unless you develop some last minute. There's an example in the Srimad Bhagavatam where this very elevated devotee, Bharat Maharaj, he was almost at the pure level of love of God. Almost there. But he always served God, he served the devotees, he was very fixed on his service to God. But towards the end of his life, he developed an attachment to a deer. And he became so attracted and so attached to that deer that he became, instead of being in God consciousness, he became in deer consciousness. So the last moment of his life, he thought of that deer and how that deer is going to be. He said, "You're going to survive." The little deer lost its mother. So he was more attached to the little deer now. And he was thinking of its welfare. To the point where he left his body thinking of deer. And the next body that he achieved was that of a deer. But thankfully Krishna gave him the intelligence and remembrance to know that what he did in his past life. He remembered everything he had done and the last thing that he had done wrong. So he knew that in this dear life I have to be more dedicated to whatever, bhakti, God, service to God and whatnot. So the point is, if you've done everything right in your life and for some reason you'd get deviated in the last moment, God is so kind that He will protect your intelligence. He will give you another body where you can remember Him more. So it's not the end of your journey. It's not that just because you remember the deer in your last life, last moment, that it's the end of your spiritual journey. No. There's still a possibility. But generally speaking, if someone's practiced God consciousness their whole life, it's very difficult for them to not remember God in the last moment, because God is so kind. Even if you forget Him, He will come to you. He will take you back. That's the important thing that we have to know. Or if we have faith in God and Guru, that no matter what I do, no matter what happens, they will take me back to Godhead. But we should not misuse this privilege that we've been given. That I have a Guru and I'm in Krishna consciousness, I can do what I want and God will still take me back. No. You'll make sure that you learn your lesson and then take you back eventually. But the point is that we should not misuse our independence. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Oh, he has a question.
Not my question. My realization is today, Krishna is completely independent, complete, but we are dependently complete. Today's class, I have realization. Hare
Yeah.
Krishna.
Very nice religion. Dependently complete. Yeah.
Oh, Shimuna.
Hare Krishna. So it is said that the soul is never touched by the material energy, right? Is that correct?
It's covered.
The soul is never touched by the material energy,
Yes, they're always separate.
right? They're
Yes.
all separate. That's my understanding.
Right.
So if it's never touched by the material energy, how come it becomes conditioned by the material energy?
Because the size of the soul is so small, and material energies. Because the soul is marginal energy. It's not Krishna's internal energy. It's not the external energy. It's in between, margin, tatashta. It has the ability to be influenced by either side, depending on what it wants. If it wants to serve God, then it will be under God's protection, divine energy, which is the Haladini Shakti. But if it wants to enjoy the world without God, then it will be under Maya Shakti, or the external energy of the Lord. But because the soul is so small, the size of the soul is 1/10,000th of a hair particle, and material energy is so powerful, that's when, yes, in this liberated soul state, it cannot affect the soul in any way, but it can cover the soul. It can influence the soul. The soul is not being affected by the material nature around us, but because it's covered, it's like if you tie me up, my little soul, if you tie me up, what am I supposed to do? How can I get out of it?
So is there some mechanism? Is there some mechanism whereby the soul, which is completely untouched by material energy, is there some mechanism that happens that it becomes affected by the material energy?
Yes.
Well, the ultimate reason is because we looked away from Krishna. We turned our love away from Krishna. That's the main reason. Everything else that follows is a symptom. Envy, pride, lust, anger, greed. These are all the symptoms. These are not the causes. So main reason is because we wanted to enjoy without Krishna. That was the main reason. And everything else that follows is just a byproduct or a symptom or a secondary cause. So when we understand what our identity is, who our master is, or who our actual friend, our actual caretaker, our actual parent is, then our relationship is reinstated again. So when we understand our relationship, then we act according to that relationship. And then once we start acting in that relationship, then we can, through that process, we can attain the goal of where we were back in the day, back in time where we were untouched by material nature. We can go back to that state of being again. So yes, material nature doesn't touch the soul, but the soul is covered. We're all examples of that. We're all in this material world. It's covered by the material energy, the soul. Prabhupada said it in numerous places. The soul is covered by the material energy.
I mean, what you said is correct, but can Maharaj?
Yeah, I mean, the actual thing that connects apparently the soul to material nature is called ahankara, false ego. And it's just a misidentification. We could say that if you're in bed and you're dreaming that a big tiger is chasing you, you are in great anxiety and you're thinking any moment this tiger will eat me or bite me. And then suddenly you wake up. There was no tiger. There was no chance you were going to be eaten. But you thought that it was. So this is misidentification. That ahankara means false ego. We identify ahamkara with the material energy. But there is true ego. When we actually connect ourselves by serving Krishna, then we realize we're not this body. This body will come. This body will grow. This body will fade. This body will pass on. But we will not. And we become disconnected. And that is real ego. we are servant of Krishna. Jivara Swarapoya Krishnara Nityada. So the living entity is always serving Krishna. So technically that thing which makes that mysterious connection between the soul that never is touched by the material energy and the material energy which is never touched by the soul, they're connected through misidentification. That technical misidentification is called the false ego.
So ahankara is an energy, because it said 8 separated energies.
Right. It's
So-
the first one.
So ahankara is an energy, and as we know, energy, we use energy to perform work. So the soul connection to material perspective is done through ahankara. That is the mechanism, right? Using ahankara energy.
Right. But I will still I still stick by with what I said, because that's the ahankara is still a secondary cause. It's the first reason is that we turned away from Krishna. That was still the main reason why the ahankara came into existence. Otherwise, if we didn't turn our face from Krishna, the ahankara would not affect us. We would be in our original ego. But because we turned our face from Krishna, that's when the ahankara comes in.
Well, you said everything was correct, but my question was, what was the mechanism between the soul and the material?
Oh, I didn't understand your question. I'm sorry.
And Mara said, ahankara.
Thank
At
you.
any rate, it was very good.
Thank you. Yes.
All right, so we'll end there. Thank you very much, Prabhavishnu.
There's one question.
One more question.
Always one more question. Yes.
হরে কৃষ্ণ প্রভুজি, আপনার শ্রী চরণে প্রণাম, গুরু গৌরাঙ্গের চরণে প্রণাম, জয় শিল প্রভুপাদ কি জয়। প্রভুজি, এটা আমার প্রশ্ন, আমার জানার একটা বিষয়, সেটা হচ্ছে যে একটা আত্মা যদি জীবনে সে অনেকগুলো প্রাণীকে সে হত্যা করলো, তো হিংসার পরিপ্রেক্ষিতে আরেকটা প্রতিহিংসাই তো তৈরি হচ্ছে। তো সেই ক্ষেত্রে যখন সেই প্রাণীটা মারা যাচ্ছে, তখন সে দেখছে যে কে আমাকে মারছে, তো তার প্রতি তার হিংসা হলো, তো সে তখন মানুষ হয়ে আসলো এবং সে আরেকজনকে মানে যে তাকে হত্যা করলো, পরবর্তীতে তাকে আবার সে হত্যা করছে। তো এটা শেষ কোথায়, কিভাবে এটাকে শেষ করা হয়? যে আর একজন তো অনেকগুলো প্রাণী, যেমন গরু, ছাগল, অনেক কিছু মারছে, তো তাকে কি সেই প্রতিটা স্টেপ এইভাবেই যেতে হবে, না কিভাবে তাকে যেতে হবে?
Can you please translate?
আপনি ইংলিশে বলতে পারেন।
It's a long
অসুবিধা নেই।
question, but the essence was, if there's instances where the body is involved in killing other bodies, animals, whatever it may be, how long does a cycle of one body killing the other body continue for, right? That was the essence of your question. How do we bring this to an end? So generally, for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. That's the law of karma. That's the law of nature. Whoever you kill, you have to come back in your next life to be killed by that same person. That's regular non-Krishna conscious or non-spiritual or non-religious life. But the moment you take Niyamadav, sit down. The moment that living entity in that body decides to take to Krishna consciousness, automatically his karma stops. Even if he's killed 50,000 people in that life, but he's taken to Krishna consciousness right away, that debt is cleared right off. Right away. But he will still suffer some reaction, minimized reaction from Krishna in some way. That much he will deserve, he will get. But the reaction will be much smaller. But anyone who doesn't take to Krishna consciousness, they're completely, at all times, under the law of material nature. And there's no way getting out of this. There's no exceptions. Until and unless you take to the one who controls material nature, which is Krishna. And even if you cannot take to Krishna, you can take to demigods, because they're parts and parcels of Krishna. So at least that's a beginning. So if someone cannot take to Krishna consciousness directly, they can take up to something. Third chapter talks about karma yoga. So at least do something. Do something. That's the beginning. If you cannot do something, then find someone who can help you do something. So I hope that answered your question.
Okay.
Sorry I have to answer in English because everyone needs to understand.
Thank you all very much, and thank you again.